Hey guys, I want to talk about being in cross-cultural or relationships or marriages, because there's challenges and there's things that are you know great about it. Personally, I'm in a great and wonderful relationship with my husband, who's from South Sudan, and I'm from Kenya. He's a Dinka and I'm Kikuyu. So it works pretty great, but it wasn't always this way. Let me start by saying that we had to come to a point where we had to decide what we were going to take from the traditions and the customs we came from and what we weren't going to take. And then we had to create our own. Some of the challenges initially was the fact that, one, he came from a place of war. Like when we met up again, his country was at war. So that already is something that I don't know how to deal with, because we have experienced peace in Kenya. Yes, I know we had the post-election violence and things here and there, but nothing to the level that they had been through. So I didn't know how to deal with that. So post-traumatic stress was like number one that we had to go through. Then there was the actual fact of kind of trying to be acceptable to their people, because they don't even marry outside their clan, let alone marrying outside the country. So there was the idea of who is this person and can we trust them, and their ways are not our ways. In fact, when a man wants to marry, he will approach his mother and say, I'm ready to marry, and she's going to go and select some girls and he's going to choose the one he wants. So it's an arranged marriage, and basically the idea behind it is, we know this person, we know their family, we know where they're from, we believe the same things, we are one, we are together, so we will walk in agreement without so much friction. So here I come, and they just don't know anything about my culture. So first of all, let me just say, one of the things that I've seen, and I remember the mothers even telling me, is that Kikuyu women are very empowered. They make decisions. They go out and do things. Like, they're very empowered in the home. And my father empowered me, and he was like, "There's no girl or boy up in here. You can do and be just anything you want to do, and I'll support you." So the Kikuyu women are very empowered in that sense. And the Dinka woman, from my understanding, is not really empowered in that sense. It's still that point of, she's a girl, she's raised to get married, and then she'll go and serve her husband and bear children and all those things that seem a bit backward to me, but they're not. When you start to see it, you're like, okay, everybody has a flow and a purpose. But at the same time, for me, it's difficult. Like, I'm not trying to go back into like being told like, this is what you do and this is how, I'm very independent and I was raised such. So it was a bit difficult in that sense. But I came to just learn that there's things you listen to and you nod and say, oh, okay, okay. And then you go ahead and do what you know you need to do anyway. In sheer respect, and you're not trying to come at anybody in a certain way. You're not saying, no, I'm a Kikuyu woman, us guys don't do that. I just go like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. All right, I've heard, And along the way, his mom has really come to a place of understanding that, okay, she's different, but she's not like evil, she's just different. And seeing that we are together in one thing. One, loving her son, my husband. Two, loving and raising these amazing kids that we have and giving them the best of everything. So what I've also tried to do is start very much become involved, or rather involve her in our situation, because it's not easy for a mother who, in general, your son was the one, he came to you and you were the woman in his life, and then now there's another woman and they're making decisions together and maybe not even consulting you, and you just feel like cut out of their lives. So I really started to involve her in our lives, but with the boundaries, and I'd be the one to call and ask, oh, give me your advice on this and that, or how do I do this and that. And I made a point to use the technology we have and call all the time so that they can video chat with the kids, because, we weren't always together. Yeah. But on that note, they still have a very communal way of living in terms of you know, the ones where the sons live at home, but they have their own individual houses in the compound, and the son's family lives there, and they do everything together. That's the kind of communal living I'm talking about. And my father was like, hey, you're a grown ass woman. It's time to leave my house and go off and do whatever the heck you want to do with your life. God bless you. I support you and I love you. So coming from that to going into a situation of, oh, now you come to live in our close to us, and we kind of watch you, and we, all these things. I was like, nope, no thanks. I'm private. I want to live way over there, away from my parents. And I don't want anybody asking me about the coming and the going of my household. You know what I mean? So it was difficult, but we got there. Initially, we lived far away, and then we came closer. And then she was like, okay, I respect your privacy, but how about you just come through for lunch? Just be coming for lunch and bring the kids by on a daily basis or whenever you can. And I was like, okay, cool, because this is great for us, even economically. And it was a great time for us to just get together and get to know one another, and for her to see her grandkids and, all of that. So we were pretty tight-knit in that sense, which has never happened to me before. Like, I've never been like seeing my mother every day. Like, I never lived away from my mom and then I came home for lunch every day. I was just like, okay. But it did improve even my relationship with my mother, because I started to call her all the time, and we just were like homies, And then we moved out to Coast, and that was difficult, for my mother-in-law. But she finally understood that, being far doesn't mean we don't love you or that we are taking away from you. So again, I use technology, WhatsApp calls, video calls, and all that, to just keep talking to her and involving her in our lives, and inviting them over, going to see them as much as we can, and that has been great. Now, the community still has not accepted me in terms of, let me kind of break it down to you in my understanding of the way things work. The firstborn has to get married before the other one can get married. It's kind of like, Leah and Ruth in the Bible situation. And that hasn't happened, so we can kind of get married. However, my father from the get was just like, I've wanted you and my daughter to be together for so long. You have my blessing. We love you guys. Go ahead and live your lives. So we started to live our lives, and I got pregnant, and that was one stage. And the thing is, while I was pregnant, I was even not talked about or heard about, because we just couldn't figure out how to break that news, to the mom. Meanwhile, on the side, he's still being presented with all these wonderful choices of ladies that he could marry from their community. So it was also very difficult for him. Eventually, we broke the news that I was pregnant, and all these things, and the mom was like concerned, of course, because she doesn't know my culture, she doesn't know my people. But once the child was born, things also changed. It was hurtful for me because I felt rejected even if they accepted my child. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like there's nothing I can do. I'm a Kikuyu. Even if you wait 20 years, I'm still going to be Kikuyu. So deal, kind of. But I wasn't going to blur that out. You know what I mean? So I spent a lot of time crying and praying. Anyway, another tradition we had to break was the naming. They have an uncle who names the children, and you don't name the living. And in my situation, you name your child, like first daughter, after your husband's mother. So that was another thing we had to break. We went to the mother and we asked, can we name after you? And she was like, oh my God, I'm honored. So we went ahead and did that. So that broke tradition, but it worked out very well. That also happened with Garang, and that was beautiful because I was dead set on naming him Garang because my husband is the son of the late Dr. John Garang, and as we all know, he passed away tragically. So this was an amazing way to just be like, Mama, I have brought you back your husband, here's a beautiful gift. And just their relationship is amazing. There's so much love between those two, and it's great to see that. And there's so many things that surprise her and myself, because we come from two times and two cultures, but there's so much that was eradicated through communicating. And let me tell you one thing, because I know people will be like, oh, they'll sit and talk about you in a different language. And I'm like, that's cool, they did that. It doesn't even get to me anymore. Because I came to understand that some of the people who live in her house do not speak English or Kiswahili. They only know Dinka Arabic or Tamongjang Dinka. So I was just like, why am I holding, a grudge about this? Speak. What happens now is they'll be like, call my husband and say, come sit here, I want to tell her something, so you have to communicate. And they'll be like, you're such a wonderful mother, and you're such a sweet girl, and you love our son so much. We thank you for that. And I got to really understand that what we don't say and how we act speaks a lot more for us, So the fact that I was able to keep holding my tongue and act in love towards their son and the children did so much for me. It spoke for who I truly was, and they were able to see that. So there was that. We are still not in a position where we can get married today. It's still not accepted, but the mother went ahead and did something amazing when I went to South Sudan, which I insisted on doing, because I was like, this guy might go to South Sudan by himself and they'll be like, hey, Mudun Yashoka, let us get him a wife. And I was like, no. We're going back, and we're going to show that he has a wife and he has some children. And I'm so glad I did that, because the mom was so happy, because she was like, I don't think she'd come here. There's no power, there's no internet. It's not like Nairobi. What would they do? But we had such a great time. I went to the cattle camps. I went to the river. We did all sorts of crazy things, and it was so exciting. And what she did was so amazing. She called the chief of their area, the Awulian, and he came over, and we had a prayer, and she presented me as her daughter, and she called me his wife, and she said these are their children. And the chief registered us in their book of the village, to show that Kariba-Garang de Mabior is married to the Kariba, and they have these children. That was amazing to me. It was such a blessing. So thank you, Mama. That meant so much to me. And I also recall just the way she accepted my son. And let me tell you something. Because my husband was accepting of my son as his own, she accepted my son as her grandson as well. And that's been a beautiful relationship. What I can also say is something I learned from my pastor. And I was having, we'd go through these little frictions, but my pastor said marriage is not an institution, it's a relationship. So create the relationship. Stop looking for a piece of paper to define this thing, okay? And start acting like the wife. So I did, and I'm so glad I did that, because that was awesome. The other thing I got to understand is that even if you don't speak the same language with somebody and their community and their tradition and custom, there's something that you can do, a language that you can speak that is known across the world. And that is love. And that can be shown and spoken and demonstrated in acts and respect and all those things. And another thing I can say when it comes to being in a cross-cultural relationship, it's be willing to compromise. Take some of what is acceptable here and what you like from this culture and that culture, and then create your own and stand strong in it as a couple. There are things that their men don't do that he does, and there are things that their women don't do that I do, and we have made it work for us. You've got to customize that thing for you, because at the end of the day, it's your marriage, okay? So if you're out there and you are wondering about, should I get involved with a man who's not from my own culture, go ahead and do it. But remember, speak love, compromise, and make marriage your own. It's a relationship, not an institution. Love you guys. Mwah.